Welcome to another edition of Working with Gen Z. Friends, we've often said the relationship with Gen Z and technology is something that everybody talks about. If Gen Y was the generation which accepted technology, Gen Z is the generation which expects technology. Technology in all its form has been a very critical part of that generation, where you think about them as a consumer, where you think about as a learner. It's almost as if there is not a separate identity that you can think about Gen Z when it comes to online versus offline. However, when you think about the close association of technology, there also comes a possibility where you can think and hear about things like anxiety, stress, the comparison culture, and often the well-being that goes with a lot of the talk that's happening in the digital space. So, what can the platforms do? What can the Gen Z themselves do to build a healthy relationship with technology? And today we're going to explore that, where social media is such potent presence in the Gen Z generation's life, but are platforms doing what they can to help make that relationship more stronger and healthier? And to help us with that is just the guest. I'm very delighted to have Alise Marshall. Alise, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Nikhil. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I know we've been trying this to get a date, and finally this is happening. Thank you for making the time. Before we dive into our questions, let's just take a couple of minutes if you can help our listeners and our viewers to tell a little bit about your illustrious career and the work that you do.
Yes, happy to. And thank you again for having me and an opportunity to speak about the work that we're doing at Pinterest. So, Alise Marshall, I am the Senior Director for Corporate Affairs and Impact at Pinterest. And our work is really guided by how can we, in driving the greatest outcomes for Pinterest, also think about driving great outcomes for humanity and society and for the most vulnerable users that use our service. And we think about both corporate, social, and environmental impact. So thinking about how can we drive sustainability across our full value chain, reduce any harms or risk to people and to the planet. And most importantly, drive a net positive benefit and impact for society. And so I come to this work from a past in public policy. I spent 6 years serving as the Deputy Chief of Staff at the U.S. Department of Education as an appointee of the Obama administration. Shortly after that, I went to go work in corporate philanthropy for the first time at the Walmart Foundation. So thinking about how to drive economic opportunity across, all of Walmart's global value chain. And then transitioned into private philanthropy, working on adult and youth criminal justice reform and violence prevention in U.S. cities at the Public Welfare Foundation just before coming to Pinterest. So my work has always been guided by driving access to opportunity and reducing the risk and exposure to harm for young people and setting them up for a lifetime where they can thrive and be their best.
Fabulous, Alice. This is wonderful, and what rich background that you bring for us today. So I think we're gonna tap right into the work that you do and all the past work that you've done with the younger generation. So let's start. I want to start by simply asking that, everyone kind of has no choice but to be closer to technology, has become such a big part of our lives in some way. Maybe some generations, what I call our digital migrants versus digital the natives. So you're somewhere on one end of the spectrum versus somewhere where we're continuously on technology. Let me start by just asking, given the work that you've done in the past and especially now in the role now, what about Gen Z makes them so closer to wanting and having technology in their life that the other generations are perhaps not seeing or doing?
Yeah, well, Gen Z was really born into this. They're, what we use the term digital natives to describe their experience. And where my generation, I'm a millennial born in 85. So I definitely remember when I got my first cell phone, when I used AIM for the first time and chatting with friends, when I used Google for the first time to help write a paper in high school. I remember vividly when we went from this, sort of very analog experience to a much more digital environment. For the younger generation, Gen Alpha and Gen Z, they've been born with this technology and the advances in technology at their very, it's been from a part of their experience from birth. And so they've been operating in this really hybrid environment, right? It's not thinking about, this is my online life and persona and friend network, and this is my in real life persona and life and friend network, but it's really thinking about both of those things. They are living a very hybrid existence. And so, just it's a very different way of upbringing and a different set of tools. And I think for us, for folks in academia that are researching these issues, for technologists that are building products, I think it's important that we, and certainly something that we try to do at Pinterest, is to operate with radical clarity about to what end are we building these products and what ultimate value or problem are we looking to solve for users, including younger users. And I think where things have kind of gotten, a bit off track, is in, sucking the attention away from a young person's life and the ability to build those really rich, valuable, physical, in person, in real life connections that are so important to, achieving success in one's life, to finding fulfilling relationships, to advancing in one's career. Being able to engage in both the digital environment and in the in real life environment is so important to our maturation and life experience. And so I think operating with radical clarity for technology companies and for users of technology products about what's the value that this ultimately drives is what will lead us to better outcomes, not just for young generations, but for all users.
Yes, you make a good point. I think just building on that, I want to at least, like, let's begin our conversation there to say that when we think about platforms, and there's so many out there, can they, and I will dive into some of the challenges that could be there, but can you explain, or what's your take, where can platforms actually be there with the intent of coexisting, where you have well-being on one side and to attract them uh, to have more footfalls or just more
Mhm,
time with them. Can that
mhm,
happen? Let's just kind of
mhm.
just hear that first, and then we'll dive into saying that, okay, um, what could be some of the challenges? Yeah.
I think a very direct answer is absolutely yes. But I think it depends on what's the incentive structure that you set up from the very outset of your product, and holding true to that. That's the reason why I started with having radical clarity about what is the ultimate purpose and incentive that you're driving for your product. For us, Pinterest is think when you think about the very beginnings of this product and the ultimate service that we're providing to our users, it's search, it's discovery, it's being able to find interest, to fulfill yourself creatively, to be inspired and to inspire others. That is the ultimate value proposition that we offer to our users. And holding true to that and being super clear about that means that there may be certain trade-offs that we decide to make because it's not just about optimizing for time spent or holding the attention of the user, but it's also thinking about optimizing for the very word you used, which is well-being. So measuring for things like how are our users ultimately finding what they need, finding purpose, value, meaning, fulfillment, building their self-awareness and self-esteem on Pinterest. These are all things that we are optimizing our platform and product experience for, not just optimizing for length of stay on the platform. We're really thinking about once users are here, how are we measuring on the back end for have they spent their time well and has it contributed positively or negatively to their well-being? And we can't get to that if you don't measure it. There's a saying that you can only achieve what you measure. So it's really important that you be clear about what are the incentives and goals that you're striving for and ensuring that you continue to measure against those over time.
Well, fabulous. I, I, I just want to ask there again, Elise, that it seems that more platforms um, are are perhaps design. To use the word algorithm, or I just say that the very obvious word addictive behavior, and we've seen people
Yeah.
spending hours on it, where they just go from one to the next reel to the next to the next. And perhaps when you're at that age, you're not even aware, or maybe you get aware, and there's an element, or one could the pure capitalist in someone can say that, look, you have the option to put down the phone, you have the option to walk away from it. No one's forcing that to you. And that's what it's just getting so much more sophisticated. So the moment I even the
Yes.
word Nike as shoes, the next thing I'm gonna see is just more shoes,
Right.
ready
Right.
to take me down that path. What are some of the challenges that platforms can kind of face more generally when you think about that? Because on the one hand,
Sure.
you want someone to be on platform A, which if I'm platform A, I say that, hey, I want everybody to come to me.
Right.
Which is platform B, who says that, look, I have a different take on my framing of what the platform is supposed to do. So what are some of the challenges?
Yeah. Yeah. Great points that you raise. And, one of the things that you see a lot of times, and Pinterest is just fundamentally a different type of platform. People aren't necessarily coming to us to, share political views or to, have a moment of virality around a particular, geopolitical topic or something like that. It really is a place to come and find ideas and to be inspired. And so there definitely is an element of personalization in the modeling that is helpful, right? If I am look, I just planned a baby shower for one of my best friends, and being able to, find ideas and inspiration to make that a really special day, it's helpful to have technology assisting me in, sort of curating what that experience is gonna look like ultimately and finding those ideas. At the same time, if a young person or if any person is going down a dark path with potentially harmful content, right? If I struggle with self-image, which, that is for a lot of young women and girls, which make up a really big amount of our users on Pinterest, something that we think about a lot of times is what images are they seeing that reinforce this unhealthy, unrealistic idea of beauty. And if I am a young person and I'm continuing to go down a path of content that says to me that I am not good enough, I don't fit in, I don't fit this ideal standard, then that's a concern. And there are certain things that we want to put certain, sort of product elements that we want to introduce to to help address that and to mitigate a user from going down those, sort of dark paths. And I think again, it comes back to the decisions and choices that you make around your product. So sticking with the example that I gave around a young person and, young women and girls, and a lot of studies show this. I think the CDC's Youth Risk Behavior Survey data showed that young women and girls between the ages of 13 and 17 dealing increasingly with issues around body image and self-image because of the advent of social media and the unrealistic body standard being served up to them. And so one of the things that we introduced is something called body type technology, where we're actually leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning on the back end to ensure that as if you're a young person coming searching for if you're a young woman or girl searching for a prom dress or your summer outfit inspiration or swimsuit inspiration, you're not just seeing one unrealistic the ideal standard, right? That's being pressed to you through the media, through culture, through these other platforms, but that you're seeing the full diversity and spectrum of bodies and abilities across the world. And it doesn't just stop at body type, but also skin tone and ensuring that there is a diverse spectrum of skin tones. We've got a ton of people using our platform for hair inspiration. And you can, if I have, you know, curly or textured hair and I come to your platform and all I see is, straight, light colored hair, that is going to reinforce to me as a young person that what I look like and what my community represents or what my family represents does not measure up. And over time, the cumulative impact of that is damage to a young person's self efficacy and self image and self esteem. And so we have made explicit decisions in our product capabilities, leveraging artificial intelligence for the positive to say, how can we introduce a more diverse range of content? So there are explicit decisions and trade-offs that we can decide to make as technologists, as an industry, to say we're actually going to choose this path over that path, even if it means that we are going to turn some users away or not keep a user for an extended period of time on this really negative content. We are willing to make that trade-off again because we've got radical clarity about what incentive structure we want to pursue.
So there, Alice, let me just to double click that. How how would you turn away a person perhaps who's not aware or has
Mhm.
fallen into the trap of, hey,
Yeah.
this is what I see, this is what how it should be, and how has it benefited from your perspective? Like, in other words, do you have data or anything that just says that, I think that conscious choice of showing the big picture or showing many parts of the story just gives a much more full story. So I'm just curious, like, what without going into the technical details, but how do you
Yeah.
then let the user experience, because the user is coming almost, as they say, with the confirmation bias. They may have seen something on TV,
Right.
another device, and right,
Right.
one is just that, and the moment they see a quick upfront, like a dress that they feel like this is the dress, and it's probably not the best dress to wear in a public forum or whatever, right? How do you, in other words, how do you then, that's where the element of safety, the well-being, and all of that, the kind of that coaching comes in, right? When that intersects, what happens? Is it so do you turn away a user? Do you give them so just to make sure that they're seeing the full perspective is kind of where I'm going.
Yeah. So one of the things, just answering your question about data, when we rolled out the inclusive product features around skin tone, hair pattern, and body type, and offered up leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning to show the full diversity and spectrum of content to the user, without them having to, put any sort of qualifiers into their search, we found that saves actually increased. So when we went back to measure, like what actually happens when we're serving up something, when we're optimizing for inclusion or well-being or more positive as inspirational content, not just enragement through engagement and finding, just endless doom scrolling. What happens is users actually engage more with the content and they're saving more content. So when you look at the sort of pre-post snapshot, we're seeing that those more positive, beneficial use cases of AI is actually yielding to a not only a better user experience. So not only are we seeing better outcomes for users, but we're also seeing them engage with the product even more. So that data has been very clear based on, those product decisions that we have made and implemented over the last several years. Another example that I'll give is something called the school time feature that we've rolled out in the US and in the UK. We're also piloting it in a couple other countries right now. Especially since this conversation is focused on young people, one of the things that we know policymakers and parents and educators have been really concerned about is distractions in the
Mhm.
classroom. when you allow for cell phones and tablets and all those things. Again, young people, these are just tools that young people are accustomed to and have been born into.
Mhm.
That can be very helpful in some regards, but also can serve to distract
Mm.
from that important learning time. So what we did is we've been piloting what would it mean if we just said to a user, if we put a signal out to them, a message out to them for a user that is school age, right? So we gather this data. We know if you are a user school age during the school day, you'll get a message, a prompt that says, "Hey, so glad that you're here, but we think you should actually log off and re-engage in the classroom. It's important that you be present and building those connections and accessing all of the learning and capabilities that you're getting from school. So come back." And not only that, we offer them a link to disable notifications across the board. So just making it very simple. Again, saying to them like, so it's just a really smart behavioral nudge, a suggestion to them. It's not onerous or overly burdensome. We're giving them, quick tools to be able to turn off the distractions from other notifications. And we're saying, come back at an appropriate time. So what that says is not just, hey, we want to introduce, new rules or bans. We know, how kids are fan of all the rules that adults place on them. But we're saying have some balance, introducing some balance into their relationship with technology, something that's not just healthy for the younger generation, but is healthy with all generations. So we're still getting data and trying to understand what the end impact of that is. But those are some of the very practical, pragmatic product choices and decisions we can make as an industry to ensure that young people are not having to young people and parents and educators are not having to work double time, triple time to introduce healthier habits and uses of technology.
Do you find, Alice, having to do that's such a great initiative, especially in the classroom, and you're continuously always distracted, and it's a double-edged sword. You can use it to find good information
Yeah.
about learning, but at the same time, you can easily get distracted to go somewhere else. What have you found? Do you have any feedback from, let's say, the educators in this case, or the teachers, or for instance, even parents, appreciating that, we'd love to have you, but not now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of what parents and educators are looking for from the industry. They're looking for, in the same ways, Nikhil, that for the last, 25 years, we have been extremely creative and ambitious when it comes to building these products. How do we exercise that same ambition and creativity and pragmatism to ensure that young people are kept safe and are given the tools without having to search and hunt for them as parents, as teachers, as caregivers, but practical tools like that signal that just says, "Hey, glad you're here, but maybe come back to us later." Right? And a tool to, disable these other notifications. That's a very pragmatic choice that we're making that eases the burden on caregivers and those that are responsible for young people. And I think that's what they're asking for from the industry, Nikhil. They're asking for technologists and innovators and product leaders to make really practical choices that center the well-being and safety of young people and the users that we serve across generations, and to work with them in doing that and exercising our creative ambition to get to positive outcomes, not just to addictive features to keep people engaged and to see more ads, but to think practically about how can we introduce things like balance and healthier use cases of technology.
No, absolutely. Liz, what advice then would you have for the Gen Z generation who's listening to us and who's gonna, listen to us to say that okay, what should be the do's and don'ts for them? Because here's a
Yeah.
generation which is so close to technology. Obviously, they're very tech savvy. So certainly, there's an element of you use it and you take the benefit of it, but there's as we said, there's also a dark side. So what can be some of the simple do's and don'ts that one should just be mindful of? And this could be not just even at the school level. I'm saying even at the college,
Sure.
even at the workplace, we could just very unconsciously, subconsciously get onto a device and just be on there for a time that we just never knew. What's some advice there?
Yeah, I think one is just being aware and, even just it starts with yourself, right? And the conversation that you're having with yourself about your uses of technology and introducing more balance in every way. And whether that's in your home, like we've started as I'm a mom of three kids, one of the things we started is a couple of hours, no tech. Everybody just devices down, just simple things like that. It's not gonna be super helpful for me to put a rule in place for my five-year-old that I'm not willing, to follow as the adult in her life. So I think as adults, as caregivers, as parents, as educators, modeling what good behavior looks like is so critical. So it really does start with the adults setting a positive example, a good example for what more balanced uses of technology looks like. The other thing is just know the products that you're using. Take the time to read the community guidelines, understand what the policies are, understand what the privacy guardrails are that these different products serve up. And we can't expect young people to do that homework if we're not willing to also do that. So if you are a parent and you've got a young person who's just got their first cell phone, just turned 13 or 14, and it's asking to join these different apps, before giving a blanket no, just understand the products, understand what value they serve. And going back to, the theme that I've sort of carried through this conversation is having radical clarity around what the ultimate value and purpose of the products, of the technology, the devices that you're using, what ultimate purpose are they serving in your life? And are they and really doing sort of a check-in with yourself and asking young people to do a check-in with themselves about how did you feel after that experience? Did you feel better about yourself? Did you feel like your time was stripped away, or was it used to do something meaningful, or were you just hooked to your device? And I think that's something that, as a practice, we can start instituting into our family structures, into schools and education environments, is really getting to the heart of what is the ultimate service and intent, and how can these products be used to fuel my life for the positive and fuel my community for the positive, versus just keeping me addicted. I think all those are just very simple things we can start with today.
Fantastic. I really hope every single one of our listeners will take that to heart, because that's such a good point. Not only do you expect that they do the homework, but I think the bigger point about, especially with teens and maybe even those in colleges, like where can the parents or the educators or the elders, or how can they be just good role models? And the fact that I think if we can, I think that generation, or the elder generation, can walk the talk. I think it just makes that much more easier for the Gen Z, which is born into technology. Now let's flip this list to just say that, okay, what advice then would you have for the platforms? Because obviously that
Yeah.
divergent view where they're saying that, look, it's all about monetizing. I want my customer, I want them to stay as long and as long, and so that I can create the customer life value from him or her. But what could be the advice where you make the trade off or the balance, as you say?
Yeah. I think one is understanding, again, what's that value proposition that you're offering to your users? What is your product helping them to solve or do, and how, and being very clear and surgical and precise in how we measure that as an industry. How are we measuring things like purpose, not just time spent, but time well spent? Something that our CEO and company leadership has really been focused on for the last several years is this notion of being able to compete in the marketplace on safety. So just like we compete on number of users and time spent and revenue generated on the platform, how can we start actually competing on common safety metrics? So we're partnering with a couple of folks in academia right now to understand what are some of those basic common safety measures that we can start holding ourselves as an industry accountable to, and competing and measuring ourselves up in the marketplace based on those measures, based on those indicators of how well are users actually responding, how are they doing on our platform. And so those are, again, you cannot achieve what you do not measure and what you do not hold yourself accountable to first. So, as an industry, the call to action would be to be very surgical and precise and set very clear goals and targets around safety and well being. And don't, and push ourselves to be very transparent about releasing that and sharing that and measuring the industry based on those safety and well being targets.
Fantastic. And I just want to underscore that once again. I think in a world where, as you say, the metrics are very all too common about the time you spent and the revenue generated, can we consciously think about, the purpose and the well-being, and can we highlight that? And I'm very happy, as you've highlighted in the Pinterest story, just some of the things that you're doing very consciously, to be the platform and also sort of create the guardrails. Liz, it's been a one fabulous conversation. You do a lot of good work. If any of the listeners or viewers want to reach out to you, where can they find you? Are there any sites or handles that you want to share, please?
On LinkedIn, just Alise Marshall at Pinterest. Find me there and would happy to engage or share with any of your listeners who I know are on their career journey. Happy to share some of my experience that might help them along the way.
Fantastic. So there you have it, friends. Please do reach out to Elise, as she's deeply passionate about the impact that both that she's making in the role now, but even in all her previous roles. And so I do believe that the Gen Z generation across the globe, and I don't speak that just in the US, I know that in Asia and in India, such a potent force that we want to build. And therefore, I think we need leaders like you to say that, okay, how do we leverage technology but in a good way? And thank you, Elise, for a fantastic conversation. And I hope
Thank you.
you have a great rest of the week, and hope our travels, allow us to meet us in person sometime soon.
Hope so as well. Thank you so much, Nikhil. Great to be with you.
Okay, take care. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.